Okay, so now it's your turn to ask questions, and we're going to have, one of the things I should have said is that I should have introduced to you the students who are really integral to making all of this happen and who did a ton of work on this. One of them is making her way to the microphone now. What she's going to do, the reason she's doing this, is that in order for us to capture all this on videotape, she's going to discreetly repeat your questions into the mic so it gets recorded. This is Carolyn Noon, who, by the way, is also the maker of the wonderful poster. And we also have, she's a third-year student. Other third-year students are Nicole Mooney and Meredith Holly. And then our second-year fellows are, I know the answer, I know this, don't worry, Jackie Ginnick, who's right there, up right, the background paper, and Laura Woods, who's running the camera. So we need to thank them for the work that they do. So if you have questions or comments or anything, please just raise your hand, stand up, or you don't even have to stand up, just raise your hand, and then we'll repeat it, and then we'll talk, so you can address it to anybody. Ms. Hyatt.
Did you find that the students were positive about the bullying program and the bullying program that you said like skills are good?
Did you find that the students had a positive reaction to the anti-bullying program?
The students are very supportive of bully prevention programs that make sense and are developmentally appropriate. The first version that we developed was for elementary school students. And then I had the middle schools asking me for a program, and so I thought, well, we could try it, I'm not sure. So the Spencer Butte thing was an experiment, and we learned a lot from the students, that there were certain things that had to change for it to be effective in middle school and high school, but the basic ideas are, I'm a behavior analyst. I'm a behavioral scientist, essentially, and so what you described from a phenomenological point of view, what's going on inside people's heads, I described from a scientific point of view, which we believe that in the majority of bullying incidents, the reinforcers are social. Reactions from victims and reactions from bystanders, attention that they get. And so what we want to do with bully prevention programs is to remove the social reinforcers that maintain socially aggressive behavior by teaching kids some simple skills, some simple efficient skills like a school-wide stop signal, where if somebody's treating you in a way that feels disrespectful, you say stop. If they don't stop, you go to the next step. We also teach bystanders, don't support it, here's how you cannot support it, et cetera, et cetera. So the same ideas are, middle school students embrace those same ideas, but you have to do more around cognitive processing so that they understand it, and that it's more complicated how they actually don't support it without putting themselves at risk and so on. So the answer is yes, students like the programs, and in fact, some student groups have done some amazing things around either creating slogans or a pledge or a YouTube video that has pro-social messages and don't be part of it, you know, as part of their campaign school-wide.
Yes.
I know that the parents go to the schools and hold them liable for the bullying. Does the school ever go to the parents and hold them liable?
The question is, does the school ever go to the parents?
We don't ever push legal charges against parents, but there are times when we've made the victim and his or her parents aware of their legal rights and said, you might consider pressing charges because this falls under the realm of criminal activity. So in a roundabout way, yes.
Do you ever, when you're doing in-school discipline stuff, bring the parents in, just at that level?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That would include what you're talking about.
Parents are always involved in, well, I say always. If things are working the way they should, parents are always involved in in the discipline process. They're notified. If the parents don't like it, more investigation is done and so on. So.
Jackie?
I will say, though, that we have some limitations legally in what we can do. For example, a lot of times the parent of the victims will want to know, so what action did you take? And state law prevents us from telling them. But what we can tell them is we take all these situations very seriously. We've done a full investigation. We found that this does meet the definition of a harassment or bullying incident. Here are examples of the kinds of actions that we would typically take in this case, but I cannot tell you what specific action was taken in this particular situation.
It seems that most of the research and the approach in the schools is to focus on students bullying each other, yet most of or a large portion of the cases that have made it to court are students bullying principals or teachers. What is the response either from research or within the schools to that?
Let her repeat the question.
Yeah, thanks.
So a lot of the cases are coming from students who are essentially bullying principals. But a lot of the research is involving students who are bullying students. And the question is, what is the response of the schools between those differences?
If school district personnel are either bullying kids or there's excessive disciplinary action taken because a kid did something that was disrespectful to a principal. First of all of our schools have rules about respect. So disrespectful behavior, if it reaches a certain level, and if the kids aren't responsive to instruction, becomes a disciplinary matter, and from our point of view, because it's disrupting school. The question would probably be, was the disciplinary action appropriate or was it excessive? If the parent believes it's excessive, that the principal implemented consequences that were not in proportion to the level of the problem behavior, then there's a complaint process that they can go through with the district and we would review it. If it were found that a principal took excessive action, or if it were found that an employee was bullying or harassing a student, then that would become an administrative matter. And so typically we would treat that a lot the way we do with kids. That, you know, first time it happens, there would be some education, some written plans to support the teacher. The teacher would be reprimanded, would be asked to change their behavior. If there were repeats, it could ultimately result in dismissal. I've had parents call me about school adults bullying their kids. In both of the cases, they were actually not district employees. They were coaches who did not work for the district, but were coaching teams on a volunteer basis. And in those cases, the principals still intervened and took corrective action to the parent's satisfaction. So that's how we would deal with it here. Did that get at what you were asking?
I think maybe not. As I was saying in the introduction, most of the court cases involve cases where kids have targeted a teacher or the principal. You know, the fake MySpace pages,
Yeah.
the email campaign saying the administration made some stupid decision that was really bad and they're all douchebags, and so send an email. Those are most of the cases where the litigation actually occurs.
So we haven't had, to my knowledge, that kind of thing happening in our district. We have had...
Kids are that good.
They're that good. We have great kids. We have had an incident where it was kind of similar, but it didn't reach that level, but the student was very unhappy with the decision the principal had made, and the student emailed me, and I did mediation between the principal and the student, and we worked out a solution. So, I mean, but we've not had a time when kids did something really nasty that I'm aware of toward a principal that reached the district level or anyway came to me.
Can I ask a question? Is it kind of a slippery slope from a student posting something negative about a principal to something like rate my professors or rate my teachers, which I think they have at the high school level? I mean, because,
Some of those are pretty mean.
yeah, I've had my share of mean ones, and, you know, the anonymity thing allows people to say some pretty horrible things, and so, and I guess it's like, where does that line start to be drawn?
To me, that behavior would certainly fall within the category of disrespect. And disrespect is considered a disciplinary matter in all of our schools. So if it happened, according to our policy, the administrator would have the right to deal with it as a conduct problem. And again, the range of actions they might take would depend on repetition, severity, and so on.
Other questions, comments? Carolyn?
I have a question.
Copy this?
For Professor Sheehan, have you seen any research where there are students bullying adults or grown-ups or anything like that that would, you know, maybe be able to speak to some of the legal issues that are?
I haven't seen any research, although there certainly is a lot of commentary at the academic level about you know, what is our role in participating in social media with students, and in terms of, you know, should we say something if we see behavior that is inappropriate, knowing, of course, when we're dealing with college students that most of them are 18 or older. But the interesting thing that we face, I think, is that students that the increase in employers who look at a student's social media activity in order to make decisions if they would hire someone is becoming the research is showing those numbers are huge. So trying to convince students that they leave this electronic trail of you know, being a jerk is really going to hurt them in their future is a really hard lesson to get across, but we are hearing it at so many levels from people who are going to employ these students as, why would I hire the student who said they're skipping class because they're too hungover? You know, that's kind of what I'm seeing more in the literature these days.
One thing that I might tell you all that's sort of outside the specifics of what we're doing, but that's really interesting. I've been doing some research about this myself, and I found a few cases about college, and I had gone into this assuming that when you were talking about college students doing stuff like this, which they do, it would be a totally different ball of wax legally, and it's not. The universities at a practical everyday level may not be as interventionist as the public schools, but when the universities have taken action against college students, university students, for their use of social media against faculty members, against other students, the courts apply exactly the same tests that they apply to high schools and elementary schools. And one of the things I wondered, we talked about this among ourselves in the Child Advocacy Project. I was wondering about you all, about the law school. What happens in the law school? But you may not want to tell publicly. But I mean, I know that there are rules in the law school about use of the law student listserv, that there are, you know, you can get kicked off of that for being a complete jerk. But what about, you know, Facebook stuff and so forth like that? Is that an issue? Yeah.
Well, I actually have a different question.
Okay.
Which is, I'm just wondering if there are any recent cases of students or student parents seeking to hold schools liable for not taking administrative action when bullying occurs, and
Okay.
what have been the outcome of those cases?
So the question is whether or not there are cases where schools are held liable for not taking action to protect students from other students for bullying. And the answer to that is yes. They aren't cyberbullying cases. They are cases where, the classic bullying stuff at school. And there's even a Supreme Court case that confirms that schools can be held liable, that they are responsible for creating a safe environment. Now, they're in extreme circumstances. I mean, they're not things like calling people names. They are more serious things. And they aren't cyberbullying cases, where the stuff that goes on happens outside of the school, and then the claim is that there's a response inside the school. Maybe some of these things were triggered by something that happens outside school, but the case is really involved. There is something going on at school that the school independently clearly could do something about and should do something about.
How often does cyberbullying lead to physical altercations?
How often does cyberbullying lead to physical altercations?
I don't know the exact answer to that, but in the survey we did, about 45% of the bullying was verbal, and about, I think, right around 30% of it was physical, and about 15% was technological. So most of it is verbal and physical, and I don't know when all three might be involved. It started technological and then became physical.